Welcome to Pyro, Star Citzen's new hostile star system where everything, including the star itself, wants you dead. Which is why you'll need this guide if you're looking to participate in the ongoing tech preview, a sampling of just a portion of what Pyro will have to offer on its full release. So in a moment, I'm going to guide you through what you can expect in Pyro and give you some tips on surviving your first glimpse. That way you can make every minute count of the limited play windows that they have on offer. And if by the end you think I did a good job and I deserve it, don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and bell icon to show your support. So let's begin with what to expect. Star Citzen currently is running a series of limited playtests in what they're calling a tech preview channel. I'll let you guys know how you can get involved towards the end of the video so that you can test it yourself. This version of Pyro then isn't connected to Star Citzen's first star system, Stanton, just yet. That's because server meshing and even the tech that comes before it that enables server meshing, the replication layer, aren't yet ready for showtime. The replication layer, by the way, if you don't know, is about to go live in 3.21.1, so they are moving along towards that goal of getting Pyro to us fully. So now you might understand why they're calling it a tech preview, but that's not the only thing that's missing from the experience. Things that we saw at CitizenCon, like the reputation awards, the gang mechanics, the new mission types and gameplay loops, and even some of the planets are yet to be revealed. Clearly, they're holding a lot back, but I understand that moment when they first connect Stanton to Pyro should be a big moment, and I think they need to leave some things as surprises. But even though we're not getting the whole picture, don't let that discourage you, because even with just a fraction of the content they have planned, it's still a huge amount of stuff to see. And as I found out, it's more than can be experienced within just the 8-hour play tests that they're doing. So now that you know what to expect, let's talk about getting started. Pyro is very different than what you'll be used to if you've played Star Citzen before. The difference starts straight from the beginning, right when you launch the game. Instead of having landing zones like cities like we're used to, you're instead given a handful of stations to choose from as your starting off point. Personally, I'd recommend the Checkmate Station option, but all of them will have something interesting to offer. But don't let that lack of landing zones fool you into thinking that there's not a lot of content to experience there. Checkmate Station alone has more content within it than all of the current landing zones we have in Stanton combined. Once you've chosen a starting point, you'll be presented with the next major difference from Stanton. If you were thinking that this was going to be a cozy, welcoming place, you're going to be sorely mistaken when you wake up. The place feels like it's just barely held together, straight from the hab itself and then into the hallways. Even the people feel like they're run down and barely holding it together. And all this visual noise can make it kind of hard to navigate. That is, of course, unless you know what to look for. There are signs posted around Pyro's stations to allow you to get around. Specifically, exiting the habs and getting to the hangars, you'll find a bunch of exit signs that will eventually lead you to the elevators that will take you there. I know I had a bunch of trouble the first time I navigated this station, so hopefully this helps you. It makes a lot of sense if you know the lore. These stations have been abandoned for hundreds of years by the corporations that built them and have since been taken over by a different kind of faction. Which brings me to maybe one of the most important things to know when you're checking out Pyro. The factions here are not the lawful ones you're used to. In Pyro, things are owned by gangs and criminals instead, which have the run of everywhere you go. If you choose Checkmate Station, for example, you'll run into a number of tattooed people walking around, and those are members of the ruling gang of Checkmate called the Rough and Ready Gang. Their tag is the RR you'll see spray painted around the place. As long as you don't run afoul of their rules though, you'll be fine. And one of the cool things that's unfortunately missing from this playthrough is that if you want to, you'll also be able to join these gangs and earn some of those tattoos for yourself. Climbing the rep ladder will also have more benefits than just visuals. It'll bring you reputation-based rewards, like better armor, and access to higher locations within the station itself, which will offer better things for sale that you just can't get anywhere else. If you're curious about snagging a peek at what they'll have to offer, you can actually get up there right now since they don't have any mechanics to stop you just yet like they plan. So you'll find a series of more specialty-based places to buy things that will sell things like railguns. Railguns, if you don't know, can't be bought in Stanton currently. Clearly then, Pyro is going to be a destination for anyone looking to get an edge up in PvP. But despite the missing features in this release, there are still a lot of things to check out if you open your Mobiglass, where you'll see a variety of faction missions available to you. Each of these missions are issued by one of the factions in Pyro, and it will gain you rep with that faction, but potentially at the expense of another faction, so you'll need to check who you're targeting when you take one of these missions. Because even though there isn't a reputation ladder yet, reputation still does matter for what missions you can take and who's hostile to you in Pyro. I experienced, for example, hostility landing at some of the outposts owned by another gang, the Headhunters, since I had taken a bunch of missions shooting them earlier from the Rough and Ready gang. If you're curious about who the major players are though, it's the Xeno Threat, the Rough and Ready gang, the Headhunters, and a group of civilian goody two-shoes who want to make Pyro safe, which is kind of laughable. Pyro is not safe. Back to the missions though, there's a variety of really cool missions you can choose from here. A number of them will actually stay on the station, which are the first I'd recommend you check out. The first one I took was to clear a hangar out of a rival gang. That one's pretty fun, but you can also do a maintenance mission, which may be easier to get to by flying out of the station and then locating the airlock on the outside of where it is in the lower maintenance areas of the station. There is a way to get down there within the station itself, but it's quite a bit of a labyrinth and hard to figure out. But it still is worth doing if you're interested. These stations are immense, and it's really hard to communicate that with words or just a few shots. Once you start running around, you realize there are twists and turns, secret access places, just tons of things to explore at every turn. And any one of those turns could end up in a pit where you fall and die, or another player, or a hostile NPC. It's kind of cool and exciting. I definitely recommend it if you're interested. You could easily spend all of your time testing that you have just on the first station you visit, but you're probably not going to want to do that because there's a lot more to Pyro to experience before they shut down the preview. But one of the things that I think you should know that I learned along the way is that there's another major difference between Pyro and Stanton, and that's there are no communication arrays in Pyro, or comm arrays for short, and these are the things that report crimes. The result is pretty predictable. Most people you come across is a murder hobo, so I'd recommend that you take no chances when you encounter other people unless you want a quick trip back to a medbed minus your gear. You may try reasoning with them if you've got a microphone, but there's no guarantees and it may just give away your position. This, alongside the way that Pyro is designed, its hostile look, make for a constant state of suspense while playing, which is incredible and shows how Star Citizen can be one of the most immersive experiences in gaming. But once you've satisfied your curiosity with the station and done a few missions, the next thing I'd recommend you do is head on out. Before you do, I think there's a few things you might want to do just to be safe. If you thought space stations were dangerous, then wait until you leave. I recommend you stop at the market on the Galleria level first to stock up on some weapons and ammo, especially if you'd done some missions already on the station since you're probably already low. Noodles, by the way, are optional, but I'd avoid the sea nuts. Here you'll also run across a couple of new bits of kit that you can wear, but sadly it's not a whole lot. Clearly they're holding back here. But after you're satisfied with what you've purchased, then you should head down to the clinic level to round up some radiation med pens. This is a new yellow med pen used to treat radiation, which is possible given the dangerous nature of the local star. But once you're set and ready to go, departing the station begins in what's called the entrance level, a sprawling catacomb of dilapidated hallways that eventually lead you to a massive entrance area with windows in a disturbingly poor condition. Just as in Stanton, you'll find the ASOP terminals here, and you'll need to call up any ship you'd want to fly. Then you'll need to step through a pretty suspect-looking elevator in a game whose elevators are already pretty suspect, given that you could fall through them at any time. Well, that was a thing that happened in the past. But anyway, they're pretty janky. After you get through that though, you'll finally get yourself to the hangar, which is yet another experience and reminder that Pyro is just not Stanton at all. Place is run down, but at least I guess it still functions. But once you're ready to leave, it works exactly the way as Stanton does. You request leaving, but here's where you want to pay attention. The danger begins pretty much right from leaving the hangar, as there's debris strewn about many of these stations which can damage or even destroy your ship, so you'll want to watch out for that. That alone isn't the only thing you should concern yourself with, because players can also jump you at any time with no repercussions, so it's best not to linger too long. The last thing you want to watch out for is a bit less predictable, and that's the star itself. Now, Pyro is an unstable K-type flare star, which means that it has frequent CMEs or coronal mass ejections. These release a big blast of light, but more dangerously, a bunch of radiation also in the electromagnetic spectrum, which can shut your ship off. This can be especially bad if you're navigating hazardous environments or you're in the middle of a fight. So once you get the warning, which you'll get via like a pop-up on your screen, and your whole MFD will start kind of like jittering about, you're gonna wanna look for some cover. Cover can come in the form of going to a station, going behind an asteroid that shields you from the sun, or even landing on the dark side of a moon or planet. This goes doubly so if you're walking outside or EVAing, as CMEs will give you a huge dose of radiation that will accumulate until you die. Hence the yellow med pens I had you guys get earlier. Now, some people have been saying that they're bugged and that sometimes they get stuck. That's not the case as far as I've been able to tell. They just tend to last for longer in some instances and be more intense, so watch out for those ones especially. And actually, on an unrelated design note, one thing I do hope that they do that they've not talked about yet is to add some special effects to the star itself, specifically for giving us a visual cue for when the star might be about to eject another CME. It's a minor thing, but I think it would make for some really great environmental design to help inform players who maybe aren't in a ship and aren't getting that warning. And this brings me to the other locations of Pyro. Now I'd like to draw your attention to the star map, which unfortunately is still the really bad one that we've been dealing with for years, so no new one just yet. I can't wait till we get that. It could really come in handy here in Pyro. Here on the map you'll find that there are a number of Lagrange points and asteroid clusters to visit to do salvaging and mining. There are also a bunch of additional stations to visit if you're interested, which are in different states of repair, some being completely derelict, while others are occupied by gangs, as I've already explained. In this test though, we only have access to 3 of the planets that are in the Pyro system. My favorite has got to be Pyro 3, but let me know which one you like best down below. Each of them have a very different character, and each of them are hostile in their own ways. Later, we'll also have things like deadly crabs that will whip you to death, which look really cool in the concept art. I'd recommend a trip to each before you start any mission, and to go to the daylight side, because that's where you're going to really see the cool designs. The hurricane atop Monox, by the way, is particularly cool. Afterward, I'd recommend taking an outpost mission of some kind, as it'll take you to one of the outposts to perform some kind of clear mission. It's pretty similar to Stanton in that effect, but the environment is completely new and interesting, much more interesting than a bunker in Stanton, I must say. Depending on what mission you take, you'll come across things like fully occupied settlements, pirate or faction like gang-owned settlements, derelicts, and settlements owned by the civilian Free Pyro faction. These ones are the ones that are fully built up and, I guess not new looking, but just really nice looking in general. Overall, I found that they're much better put together than anything we have in the Stanton system or anything we've seen in the past from CIG. They feel very reminiscent of something you might find on the Outer Rim in Star Wars. They feel like they're living and breathing locations with stories waiting for you to find. They have roads and taverns and landing areas and markets and people going about their business. They truly are spectacular, and it makes me really long to put down some roots and live in Pyro a little bit, even though it's really dangerous. I especially love the civilian faction settlements. They feel so cozy and welcoming. They're probably also the only safe feeling place in Pyro, but I should remind you that no place in Pyro is safe. And that brings me to something that happened to me while I visited one of these safe, quote-unquote, safe settlements. I was touring around when suddenly a player in a character that was man, he had a couple friends with him, started blowing up all the landed ships around the settlement. I tried to fight him off in my 400i, but Carrick's hard to bring down by yourself, so I went back and I got Nares, and, well, it turned out in my favor. Overall then, the experience has been absolutely phenomenal, and I'm so looking forward to when this releases. But maybe I'm not so much looking forward now going back to Stanton. It's the Star Citizen, unfortunately, that we have at home. But I hope this guide has helped you get around just a little bit. If you guys are looking to test it yourselves, by the way, CIG will eventually get around to everyone. So if you've not received an email yet giving you access to the playtest, don't worry, it'll eventually come. They're currently selecting people from a pool of players who've played a lot already, or people who got the Sitcon goodies pack, or people who are in concierge. Yeah, I know there's some favoritism going on there with how much money you've spent, but I guess you gotta give them some perks for backing the game, I suppose. You'll also want to head to the forums to see when the next playtests are. They've changed them actually more than once, so I'll put a link in the description so you can see what the current schedule is. And then finally, I want to know what you guys thought if you had a chance to play. Again, it's got me super excited for the future of the game just in general, and when especially it's connected to the Stanton system. I look forward to seeing the dichotomy of the two opposed systems right next to each other and how it separates the players from safety loving care bears to risk-seeking crazy people. I'm probably going to be on the risk side. I also look forward to the rewards that it promises for running the Pyro Gauntlet. But let me know what your thoughts are down below, and if you want to see anything else that I've shown in this video in more detail, or just discuss some parts that are coming with Pyro. But you know what to do then if you guys want to see those videos. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you thought I deserved it by the end of this video. That sounds like my intro, because it's exactly the same. See you guys in the next one.